Welcome to another episode on our channel. You've seen this scene before of a Vietnam vet with two prosthetic legs looking at a memorial and perhaps thinking about a friend of his. He's brought his two dogs with him, a miniature pinscher and a long-haired dachshund. But I think what I'm trying to do with this episode is to show you what can be done if you have the right equipment and you're really into customizing, perhaps considering investing in some equipment and making accessories yourself. So the prosthetic legs were made by my husband, which were painted black, and I just touched them up with silver in places where joints are supposed to be and pistons and that sort of thing. I think they came out rather nicely. And this is very unique. You won't see this on eBay being sold, but you may find them being sold eventually. Who knows? We do have a eBay, I wouldn't say store, but we sell some things from time to time. You can make animals as well. This wouldn't take much in terms of painting it, just black and brown, and this for the miniature pinscher and for the smaller dachshund, just shades of brown, black eyes, black nose. Wouldn't take much to make that. Wouldn't take much to make a helmet either. So I'm just going to show you a bunch of things that my husband has made over the course of time to perhaps wet your whistle in terms of curiosity about what it would take to get equipment to make these things. That would cost you pennies on the dollar to make versus, buying something on the internet, on eBay, that might cost, $7, $10, and then you'd have to factor in shipping, and before you know it, you're spending $15, $20, $25 for something, for maybe just one thing. So what can you make? You can make tons of things. You can make shields. Now, this is a shield that Captain America would have used in that first movie where he's actually literally shot at by Peggy Carter. So this was made out of resin, and it does have the supports where you could put an arm through and a hand to hold it and basically position it where you want it to be. We can make things like a skull. I've done this. We've done some miniature skulls this size, maybe slightly smaller, or they've been actually weathered as well. Paint it bone white and just do a little weathering to make it look older. So a skull, that might cost you a small fortune on eBay or some supplier over the internet. It literally cost you pennies to make. It's just a fascinating idea. He's going to come in and talk a little bit more about this process after a bit, whether it's this episode or the following episode. Here's another shield. Again, it has the loops where you could put the arm and hand, and the figure can hold this. It was painted black, and then the raised element of the shield I painted gold. It's a really battle-worn shield, but it's cool looking from my perspective. With this particular shield came some other weapons. So a battle axe, fantasy-like look to it, with the axe up here, the pedal down here, a wooden dowel that was stained to complete the look here. Used a different set of colors for a spear. So this has more of a bronze look with the pedal down here matching this here, but this is the same type of wooden dowel that was used here, stained. A couple swords that were made, one more fantasy like that would match this thing, and the axe. Yeah. And this would be a gladius that would be more in keeping with Roman times, with some painting that I've done on it. Sky's the limit with stuff you can make these days, if you have good models that you can start with. And my husband can tell you where you can find those models if you're curious about how to get this going. What I just showed you with the shield and the battle axe and the fantasy sword, this is where this helmet came from too. He had to modify it a bit to make it work, but it has a mask with eyes. So it's a wood god, a deer antler god, an antler, whatever you want to call it. It's that god's helmet with the antlers fully in place. So this is 3 pieces put together that, again, literally cost pennies. But if you're not into fantasy and you want something a little more conventional, maybe you want a cowboy hat. That might cost you a small fortune on eBay, but pennies on the dollar to make. And all sorts of different looking hats to boot, made out of resin. This is a hand. I don't know if you could, more of a robotic type of hand. Let me put it near my neck so you can see the fingers a little bit better. Yeah. So if you wanted to create a robot, you could. In fact, my husband created a lion for me. I don't know why he created a lion. Blue. Lions who are winning this year. After I laughed when I said, well, maybe they could win the Super Bowl way back when. And I laughed because I didn't think they could. And now I have a little hope that maybe they could. I don't know. We'll see what happens, I guess. But this line isn't done. I think I'm going to make it I'll paint the main little darker brown and then do the eyes and the nose and so forth. I think I might make it a blue cape with a lion's emblem on it. Just saying. My line. But you can make other things. You can make fantasy guns. This is a large fantasy gun. He made a smaller one for me too. Same thing, exact same gun, except it's just a touch smaller. It has a trigger on it, hammer. Doesn't move, but you know, as long as it looks good, right? This is a sawed-off shotgun with 2 hammers and 2 triggers. It's fairly small, but you can make them larger too. This is a steampunk looking like gun with a very cool trigger and attachments and so forth. So more rounded. Could even look like a pirate gun to a certain extent, but you could make a pirate gun. You know, a flintlock pistol or what have you. Here's a .45 long Colt. So Western stuff to go with the Western hat. Yeah, you can see it there, right? And just a .45 1911. I think he's working on a few more guns right now, but literally pennies to make this stuff. If you have the right model and you have the right equipment. So I hope I've wet your whistle, so to speak. Accessorizing figures is not a cheap venture, but I found it's become more financially reasonable ever since my husband has developed the skills to make these types of things. It's cut back on my costs. So again, I hope I've wet your whistle. I hope you're interested. And I think he's going to have a few episodes for you to kind of get you up to speed with how to do this sort of stuff if you're interested. I've been thankful he literally has become interested in stuff like this, because I never would have ended up with things like, a prosthetic leg. So, or a antler helmet. Or, most importantly, a lion that needs a blue cape. He's a Chiefs fan. You go, Lions. Anyway, I hope you've liked what you've seen. I hope you're interested in seeing what can be done. We'll start delving into this topic and opening up the doors where really you're only limited by your own imagination. So anyway, guys, I hope you've liked what you've seen. If you have, consider giving us a thumbs up and subscribing to our channel. In the meantime, have a great one.